All right, so like I said before, when we just looked at our trig ratios, trigonometry is the study of the angles, the relationship between the angles and the sides of a triangle. So again, we're looking at specifically right triangles, which means we have a 90-degree angle here. And what we're going to look at is using trigonometry to find the length of a side of one of these triangles. All right, so when I look at my first example here, again, I have a side of 122. I have my right angle here. We're looking for a side x, and I always put my angles inside the triangle. Now, the first step to finding the length of a side is to write down the information that you know. All right, now the first thing again is I have a 60-degree angle here. So I'm going to write down the fact that I have a theta, right? As I mentioned before, that's a Greek letter, theta, that represents some angle. And in this case, I actually know not only that it's some angle, it's a 60-degree angle. Now, I have two sides here. And again, with trigonometry, you have to know which sides those are because you've got three options. You've got the opposite, the adjacent, and the hypotenuse. Now, again, when I look at the 122, it is a cross from the right angle. So that is telling me that is the hypotenuse. All right, now secondly, we have our x here. Now, beside that angle is x, and so is the 122. So one of them is the adjacent. Well, I've already determined that the 122 is the hypotenuse. And so that makes our x the adjacent. So that's the first step, writing down your given information. The second step is determine which trig ratio you have to use. You don't get a choice here. There's only one trig ratio that is going to involve the hypotenuse and the adjacent. And so that's where those phrases come in again into play and helping you remember which one you're going to use real quickly. And so I go through it where I look at sine on highway, sine opposite and hypotenuse. Now, that's not the sine trig ratio that I'm going to use. Cozy at home, at adjacent, home hypotenuse. That's what I have. So because I have the adjacent and the hypotenuse, I have to use the cosine ratio. So I have cos theta, again, cozy at home, the adjacent, divided by my hypotenuse. So that's the second step, is determining which trig ratio you have to use. Again, don't have a choice. Now the second or third step, substitute your information in. All right, so I have, I know theta, so I'm going to have a cos 60 degrees is equal to the adjacent. Make sure I get things lined up here. That's x, and my hypotenuse, which is 122. All right. Now the next step is this cos 60 degrees. I can actually figure this out. So I'm going to type that into my calculator. Now calculators are about 50-50. Some you have to hit the cos button, then 60. Others you hit the 60 and then cos. You have to figure that out with your calculator. But before you even do that, you got to make sure your calculator is in degree mode, which means there'll be a little D on your calculator. What's the other ones I've seen? DRG, DEG. Those are all the things that you want to have. That's the mode that you want your calculator in. It needs to be in degrees. Now, if it is in the right mode, so it doesn't say, what are the other ones? RAD, radians, gradients, GRAD or GRD. There's a lot of different ones. Those aren't what you want. You want your calculator in degree mode. All right, so now if you hit cos 60 or 60 cos, again, depending on your calculator, I will actually get 0.5. So that's something you want to make sure you can do. I have had students in the past, they press all the right buttons, get all the wrong answers because their calculator's not in the right mode. Now, getting to my equation here. I'm going to do a little trick here. I've got 0.5 equals x over 22. I am going to make 0.5 a fraction. And it's easy to make any number a fraction because I can just put a 1 in the denominator because anything divided by 1 is itself. I'm not changing the number, I'm just changing the way it looks. And I'm doing that because now I have a fraction equaling a fraction, which we looked at earlier today. So to solve a fraction equaling a fraction, I'm going to cross multiply. And so I'm going to have 1 times x is equal to 0.5 times 122. Well, 1x, that's what I want. I want to know what an x is, or one of them. Then next, I just take 0.5 times 122, and I get 61. And there we go. That's using trigonometry to find the length of our side. All right, we're going to try another one. Again, following the steps I laid out. So again, I look at my diagram. I'm going to write down my given information. So again, there's my angle inside the triangle. So I know that my theta is 33 degrees. All right, now again, I have two sides. One I know, one I don't know. So I have to figure out which is which. Now again, the easiest thing to do is to look at across from the right angle. That's always my hypotenuse. So in this case, x is my hypotenuse. All right, and the last one there, I've got that 408. It is a cross from the angle, and so that makes that 408 the opposite. All right, second step. Which trig ratio do I have to use? So that's where I'm going to go through sine on highway, cozy at home, tan on arms. So the first one, sine on highway, opposite hypotenuse. Opposite hypotenuse. Bingo. I got to use the sine ratio. All right, so that again, sine theta, sine on highway, that's the opposite divided by the hypotenuse. All right, so now I'm going to, third step, substitute my information in, and then I'm going to solve for my x. So sine theta, well, that's sine of 33 degrees. Equals the opposite. Again, I've got my information written out, so I'll just grab it. There's a 408 there is my opposite. And the hypotenuse is, in fact, what we're trying to find. So that's our x value. All right, now, again, got to have your calculator in the right mode. I press sine 33, and I'm getting 0.54. And again, the other side's not going to change here, so I got a 408 divided by x. All right, now again, here's where I do that trick where I am going to create a fraction equaling a fraction so that I can do the cross multiplying, get rid of all the fractions. All right, so this time I'm going to have a 0.4 times an x, 0.54 I should say, times an x, is equal to 408 times 1. Well, anything times 1 is just itself. So 408 times 1 is 408. All right, and then my last step is to divide by my numerical coefficient, get x by itself. So I'm going to have to divide both sides by 0.54. All right, so those 0.54s divide each other out. 408 divided by 0.54, I'm getting 755.56. There we go. So again, first steps, writing down your given information, figure out which trig ratio you have to use, substituting in your information, and then solving. All right, now, I'm going to take it up a notch here. Do a little bit tougher type. All right, so example 2. Let's go with finding the unknown side once again. All right, so we'll go with, why don't we go with A over here. So A, I got this triangle here. Let's see, make sure I copy it down right. Need a right angle here. Okay, I'm going to put a 50 here. This is T here, and 312 here. And let's see here. Oh, there's our X. And I have also some information here. So this is a little extra step here that sine of angle T is equal to 0.766. There we go. And we are going to find angle X. Or, sorry, side X. All right, so now, once again, I'm going to follow the same steps. Just one extra step here, though. That's it. We'll get to that. Whoops. I don't think that was meant to be there. I'll put that out of there for now. So there is no 50 there. Forget I said that. But we'll get to that. All right, now, here's the thing. Is I have this extra piece of information. And it talks about angle T. But this time, we don't know the angle. We know the value of the ratio. And your calculator, just like when I pressed in, or when we pressed in cos of 60, I think it was, and sine of 33, your calculator will work the opposite way. Instead of having the angle and giving you the ratio decimal number, we can go the other way. If we have the ratio decimal number, we can get the angle. Here's what you need to do. You have to use, again, your calculator, the sine inverse button, which has a sign with a little -1. All right, so now there's a couple ways to do that. Most of you in your top left-hand part of your calculator will have a little 2 button, second, with an ND, second function button, or some maybe orange colored button. You have to hit it and then sine. The sine inverse button is always above sine. They're the same button. You just have to use that second function button. Now, if you do, you have to type in the decimal and then hit sine inverse, or again, calculators are the opposite. You can hit sine inverse and then that decimal. That's usually what calculators are, but probably 30 to 40% over the other way too. You have to figure that out. But when you do, it will tell you the angle. And again, the angle this time, I believe if I hit sine inverse 0.766, surprise, surprise, it is 50 degrees. All right, so you have to be able to find that that's 50 degrees there. Now, that's telling us angle T right here is 50 degrees. So that's just one extra step. But now from here on in, I'm going to do the same things I did before. All right, so I know my angle now. So I'm going to again call it theta. All right, let's see here. Across from the right angle, yeah, there's nothing there. So that's not on my hypotenuse. I don't have my hypotenuse. But I am looking from this 50-degree angle. And if I go across from that 50-degree angle, that's where I see my 312. And so that's telling me that the opposite is 312. And then that x, well, just by the process of elimination, as I've already said, we don't have the hypotenuse. We know the opposite, so the leftover one has to be the adjacent, and it is beside the angle. And so there's my adjacent, which is x. That's what we're trying to figure out. All right, that's the first step. Second step, which trig ratio do I have to use? So again, going through those memory sentences, sine on highway, opposite, and hypotenuse, don't have it. Cozy at home. I have the adjacent. Again, I don't have the hypotenuse, so I'm not going to use that one. So which one's left over? Tan on arms. On, opposite, arms, adjacent. That's the trig ratio I have to use. Again, you don't get to pick. All right, so I'm going to write it down here where I have tan, theta, the tan ratio, on arms, opposite, divided by the adjacent. All right, third step, substituting your information in and solving. So tan 50 degrees is equal to my opposite. Make sure I get these in the right order here. Opposite on the top, adjacent on the bottom. There we go. Again, I go to my calculator now. Tan 50 degrees, not tan inverse. We have the angle. So we're just normally hitting tan. So I go tan 50 degrees, I get 1.19. And again, that equals our 312 divided by x. All right, and again, this is the spot where I create a fraction equaling a fraction so that I can cross multiply and solve for x. So I'm going to have 1.19 times x. And that's going to be equal to 312 times 1. Well, again, 312 times 1 is 312. All right, and then my last step, to get x by itself, I have to divide both sides by the 1.19. And if I do that, let's see, 1.19 divided, or 312 divided by 1.19, it's going to be 262.18. There we go. So again, the same steps, just this sine inverse going in the backwards that was different in the end, or at the start. All right, now let's try one more of those, B. Leave that one up there for an example. So here we go. I've got this triangle here. I'm going to say that theta is right here. Here's my x, which I'm trying to find. You got 250 here is that one side. And here's the information. This time I'm going to tell you that tan theta is equal to 3.732. There we go. All right. So again, I have some information here that's going to help me find the angle because I know the tan ratio. I know what tan, the on arms, the opposite divided by the adjacent is going to equal that, but I don't know the angle. So again, because I'm now working in reverse, I'm going to use tan inverse on my calculator this time. Last time we used sine inverse, but because we have the tan ratio, I'm going to use tan inverse to get the angle. And so that's where I press second function, tan, and then I put in 3.3 or 732, and I get that my angle is 75 degrees. All right. Well, there's part of my given information. Now it's all about the sides, right? Better put this in here. All right. And so now when I look at my triangle and figure out which sides I have, again, across from the right angle, there's my hypotenuse. All right. Let's see here. There's my angle. Across from it's the opposite. Don't have it. That means my x is my adjacent. All right. So now the second step, which trig ratio do I got to use? Sine on highway. I know I don't have the opposite. Cozy at home. There we go. So I'm going to have to use the cosine ratio. So I got cos theta. Again, cozy at home, the adjacent, divided by the hypotenuse. All right, I'm going to substitute my information in. Let's see, the adjacent is x over the hypotenuse. That's 250 there. All right, so this time I can simplify cos 75 degrees. Yeah, the calculator, it's probably the mode you're in. That's probably the problem. All right, so if I do press cos 75, you should get 0.26. And for those of you using your cell phone for a calculator, often to get the second thing, you gotta switch it. You gotta turn it sideways. Or you gotta press a little button down the bottom. There's cell phones are a little bit different. But so here I am. I pressed it in. I got cos 75. I got 0.26. Again, I'm going to make a fraction equaling a fraction. And so let's see here. 1 times x. Ooh, I'm running out of room here. Is x. And I'm going to take 0.26 times my 250. And so my x value, 0.26 times my 250. And I get, whoa, round number. 65, right on. And that is how we find the length of a side of a triangle, right triangle, because we will do non-right triangles, but these are just right triangles.